Welcome to The Hats. The Hats is a weekly podcast hosted by licensed marriage and family therapist and author Melissa Dumaz and attorney and business owner Kerri Harper-Howie. Listen in for practical tips on how to keep your hats upright, how to handle life when one of your hats gets lopsided, and plenty of real-life solutions to help you balance the many hats you wear daily.
Hello, Hatters, and welcome back to the Hats Podcast. I am your co-host, Melissa Dumaz, and I'm here today with my co-host.
Hi, Hatters. This is Kerri Harper-Howie. I'm glad to be back with you again today.
Thank you so much for joining us, whether you are watching us through YouTube or you are listening to us through your earbuds. We're so excited to have you. Today, Hatters, we are talking about the negotiation hat. And I just want to give you a little background about today's topic. So naturally, we are in our boss babe, boss bitch season, and negotiation is definitely a conversation to be had in such a season. And so this topic has been on our agenda. And we even, decided on our questions. We planned what that programming or what that session would look like. And one day Kerri said, I love this topic. I'm just not feeling it today. Can we pause? Can we save this topic for another day? And I said yes, because I knew that meant that she really wanted to show up as the boss bitch, the boss babe that she is, in order to talk about the negotiation hat. She says it is her favorite topic. So I'm excited to have this conversation with her. I'm excited to have this conversation with you. And so Kerri, tell me about your excitement about the negotiation hat.
I mean, as I shared a little bit before we started, Mel, I have literally been negotiating since I was in high school. I negotiated my hourly rate with a lawyer. I was working at a lawyer's office, and I had been working there for a few months, and I was like, sir, I think I'm worth more. I've been working here for a few months, embarrassing in retrospect, because it should have been like a year or two, right? I have been working here, and I really think that the work that I've done is worthy. It was literally like a 50-cent increase. But in the early 1990s, that was a lot of money.
Heck yeah.
So I just feel very passionately about the importance of negotiation. I feel like I am a very strong negotiator. I have learned from some really excellent negotiators as an attorney. And I think negotiation in particular suits my personality, because I always feel like I want the best thing for insert, word, for myself, for my clients, for my children, for my friends. If you are in a position where I am trying to help you, I want you to get the very best thing. And I'm someone who doesn't mind asking hard questions, making demands, doing my research to know what the value and what the worth is. So I just feel very passionate. It's so funny in retrospect, that day, I don't remember what was going on, but I was like, when this negotiation, I'm ready to be on. Yes. I want to be on. Yes. And I just so happened to be on the heels of a really incredible leadership summit that I presented at. And so I'm bursting, I think, with like leadership lessons, and also my natural affinity for the art of negotiation.
I love it, for the art of negotiation. And I would agree that negotiation is definitely an art. I think that it is necessary. A couple things come to mind to me when I think about negotiation. One is something that my mom told me, and I've shared this in previous episodes, about me being a really shy kid. And she used to make me go and ask for things myself to try to get me out of this like shy stage or shy era. And she would say, the worst they can say is no. Mm-hmm. And she was right. Like, no is not going to kill you. The worst they can say is no. But it was always that feeling of like, but what if they say no? Then they say no. It's not a big deal. You still live. You live to see another day. And so I think about that when it comes to negotiation, is that the worst they can say is no. And then I also think about something that I heard at a conference. It was actually a conference at church on finances. And one of the guys who talked, he said, I believe that everything is negotiable. He was like, even when you go to a hotel and they're like, this is our rate, this is the rate online, that's negotiable. He's like, even if you go to a hotel and you get a room without a fridge, that's negotiable. He was like, everything is negotiable. And so I really took that information and put it in my back pocket and was like, okay, these are tools of wisdom that I need to know and that I need to learn for the art of negotiation. The other thing too that came up for me, for you, Kerri, when you were talking about going to your boss, to this lawyer, and saying, I want a raise, was audacity. and we have the audacity hat. It's like, to negotiate or to be at a table of negotiation, you definitely have to have some audacity.
Yep. You absolutely do, because things are already existing in a certain way. And so to get them out of the status quo, you've got to be willing, you've got to muster some audacity, some belief in yourself to go to the person and even initiate the negotiation. And I think the initiation piece is important because, you know, one of the first things we wanted to talk about is, what is your personal relationship with negotiation? And for me, most of my negotiating skills came from being trained as a lawyer. But going into being a lawyer, I was not negotiating my salary. I was not negotiating bonus or benefits. It really, you know, I was at a point in my life where it was generous enough that I didn't think about it. But sometimes it's really about taking that moment to say, can I get more? Whether it's being greedy or not, I don't even think that's necessarily a thing, because if you are being greedy, most of the time the answer is going to be no and you move on. But so often I think we don't even think to ask. And then if you do even think to ask, sometimes you're stopped because you lack the audacity or the belief that you can get what you're going to ask for. So I really want to emphasize what you just said, Mel. The initiation of the conversation is so important. And I do the same thing with my kids. And I just got schooled on it actually by one of my kids' teachers. And they were, I got a report for my son's grades, which were all great, except for one which was good, but not great. And so I'm like, well, what do we need to do to get to great? And the teacher said, and so I asked the questions, well, what do we need to do to get to great? And he said, you should have your son go to his teacher and find out what he needs to do to get to great.
I love it.
That is negotiation.
Yes.
That is all a part of initiating the conversation, because my son was not going to initiate that conversation. He was pretty fine with his grade because all the rest of his grades were fantastic. But we really always, I think, I would argue, we always should be in the intentional in our mindset to think about what is the current situation, and it might be good, but can we also do something, start a conversation to get it to great? I always think that we should be thinking about that. What do you think?
No, I love that. And that great can look different for all of us, and it can look different in different seasons of life. But I do absolutely agree, especially, which we've had a variety, of conversations about being ambitious women and how we are ambitious women. And for me, ambition and great, they go side by side. And so if you're showing up as your ambitious self and you know that you're going to bring greatness to whatever it is, whatever table you're getting a seat at, or you're bringing your seat to, then absolutely we should be going after greatness. But I love the idea of teaching our children how to initiate that conversation, because there's also the reality, as we talk about the mom hat or the parent hat, that they're not always going to have us to have that conversation for them. And so it is absolutely important to start giving them opportunity and showing them opportunity where they can start to have that conversation for themselves. And I'll add to that, in regards to my personal relationship with negotiation, I also see it as a muscle. Mm-hmm. And so coming off the heels of what you shared about your son going to the teacher, this is a time in his youth where he can exercise that muscle. And so when he gets into high school or college or starts a business or has his first job, then that muscle has already been toned. And then we can continue to tone it and to exercise it throughout our journeys, whether that's business or personal.
And, Mel, I think that to your earlier example, you say you were a shy young girl. You had to practice that muscle. Your mom gave you that skill. There might be some adults out there. Some of our hatters out
True.
there may very well not feel as though they've had enough practice exercising that muscle. And I think that we can safely say it's never too late to start.
Absolutely.
You absolutely can find opportunities, large and small. You may not be ready to go march into your boss's office and be like, I need a raise today, right? But it might be that in different environments that you're in, maybe in organizations that you're in, maybe within your church family, maybe even within a friendship circle, you can start to negotiate some things and on a smaller scale so you can really practice that. that. And with that, I think that confidence and that boldness begins to come. So we don't get to the point where I think our next question is, which is there a time, Mel, where you can reflect back and think, shoot, I should have negotiated and I didn't. I should have pushed a little harder, but I didn't. Or even I should have thought to negotiate, but I didn't.
That's a good question. I would say it would have to go back to when I worked full time for someone else. And it was a job that, I got hired for, and I didn't even think to negotiate. They had a range on their job description. And when they called me and offered me salary, mine fell into probably about the middle, close, a little bit over than the middle of that range. And, when I said yes, they said yes, so enthusiastically. And then I walked away from there like, they were so enthusiastic. I probably could have asked for more money. They was like, okay, cool. Like, we can't wait to have you. We're so excited. We're looking forward to working with you. And in that moment, I knew, like, I said yes too quick. I could have asked for more money. And then what I learned from a mentor of mine who I highly respect, and I've spoken about him in previous sessions. He's no longer living now, but he told me, which helped to exercise my negotiation muscle later in life. He said, even if you get offered something and you are okay with it, you don't have to say yes right then and there. You can still say, thank you so much for that offer. Let me take a moment and think about that. So even you could percolate on it later and maybe decide later, like, yeah, I really wanted it, but I want to go back and negotiate this. Or even if you're not negotiating the salary, maybe you're negotiating the terms or your day off or your benefits, because there's so many things to negotiate when you're working for someone else that go beyond your salary.
Absolutely. I cannot emphasize enough. You said that you can ask for more time. I would say that is mandatory. For any significant situation where you are being offered something and you are giving something in exchange, right? You absolutely should take time to think. And so often we feel pressured in the moment to say yes. We think, oh, shoot, well, are they going to, give it to somebody else? Or am I going to? You almost always have time. And the person who gets you to respond in haste, it always is to their benefit.
Absolutely.
And so if you just say, and you don't have to ask for 2 weeks. You literally can ask for, 2 or 3 days. You can, even if it's just overnight, because during that time, chances are you're not just going to be talking to yourself, but you will come across or talk to your spouse or a friend or someone who knew you were going in, and they call you and say, how did it go? And they can give you some advice again to get to great. And I think you're absolutely right, Mel. Every single thing is negotiable, and we shouldn't feel any kind of way about rejecting someone's initial offer and asking for more. But if you don't take that time, you don't even necessarily think about what that more is. And it may not, as Mel said, it may not even have anything to do with your compensation or benefits. It may be, I love this opportunity. Can I work from home 2 days a week?
Right.
It might, there are so many different ways. Can I get a stipend for wardrobe? Can you possibly help with my car payment in this way instead of that? Instead of giving me mileage, can you help? There's so many things that we can think about once we've received an offer. And oftentimes it's not even necessarily that we're pressured to do it, but we're just excited.
Yes.
But, channel and rein in that excitement and give yourself the benefit. I would say in an ideal world of at least 2 to 3 days, 99% of the time they will say yes.
Right.
Because if they're offering you the job, they want you at that point.
They want you. Yep. And especially if they sought you out.
Yes.
If they sought you out, they definitely want you, and they're willing to make accommodations because they intentionally sought you out and you're the person that they would like to work with.
Yeah. So, kind of reflecting on regrets, I'm going to be honest and say I can't really think of a particular instance where I feel like, shoot, I should have negotiated and gotten a better salary, compensation, experience, etc. But what I can say is I'm in a phase where I am a little bit confused about what I should do. I think I've shared that I'm interested in launching a public speaking career, and I haven't quite figured out what that looks like. So what I can say I do probably regret is I haven't really launched in the way that I could have and I should have. And I know our pastor says don't live in the could or the should, but I'm not living probably in the fullness of present opportunity because I don't know. I'm intimidated by the idea of negotiating for that. Give me something that is in my area of expertise. I'm all over it. But that is such for me a new territory that I do need to push myself a little bit more to just say, okay, this is what it is. Don't be afraid to ask for that, or don't be afraid for someone to say, no, not this, but that. So I would say that would be maybe an area of negotiation, regret in terms of just procrastination in meeting and achieving and following up on a goal that I have.
That's beautiful. And I too am in a similar season of life as Kerri and I have shared in previous episodes, which has been part of the gist of this whole season, leveling up in our own careers and our own lives. And so Kerri and I haven't talked about this yet, but I'm going to share with you what has helped me to get to a place of peace about this season of uncertainty when it comes to negotiating for speaking or when it comes to negotiating for hosting a wellness event. Is I realize that, yes, I have been in the mental health field for over 20 years. Yes, I have been in private practice for 15, 16 years. Yes, I am an excellent therapist. I've been doing this work for a long time. My tools are solid. I would be what's considered a seasoned therapist, if you will. But this season of doing more public speaking and getting paid for it, one thing that I realize is that I'm an intern there. And that's okay. That when we're starting something new in our life, whether personal or whether it's professional, it's okay to be an intern. It's okay to be, new at it. And I had, and some of it was ego with me. Well, like I've been doing this for a long time. I know what I'm talking about. How dare y'all offer me $2 to do that, And then once you
that was that inner boss bitch coming out
right.
in that moment.
With a big ego. You got a big ego. But I had to step back and say, yes, you are great. And yes, you do bring a lot to the table. But also it's okay that you have training wheels on in this area of your life. Not training wheels on speaking, but training wheels on how to negotiate, how to decide what my standard or basic rate is, what that basic, like, I'm not showing up for less than this amount is. And the other thing, and also, we have these moments, our pastor has been talking to us about should and is, like when we're like, I should be doing this, and realizing, no, this is what I am doing, and being present and living in that is. And so I had a moment like that as well, where I was offered a speaking opportunity and I was like, man, they should be paying me for this, or they should be at least covering this, or should be at least covering that. And I said, you know what? This is a beautiful opportunity outside of compensation. There's so much promise here. And this is a moment where I had to realize this is my is. Yeah, I'm thinking I should be getting X, Y, and Z. But if I really come back down to reality and think about it as an intern stage, no, this is my is, and that's okay. That doesn't mean that it's always going to look like this. That means like, enjoy me now, because if you call me next year, it's going to be a different conversation. But it's okay to accept yourself for your is versus getting stuck and caught up in like where I should be or what I think I should be getting or doing or having.
And recognizing that even in environments, again, and we've said this, so I won't dwell on it, negotiation isn't always about money.
Right.
Sometimes there are, can I speak a little bit longer? Can I speak on the main stage instead of a side stage? Even if everything else, you're paying for everything else or whatever the case may be, can I also set up a table where, people can come by and visit me afterwards? Or, well, can you set up a table on the stage that has my book? I mean, there are so many different things that you can possibly ask about or think about or do. It's not always about the money, but there is something great. You can take that, whatever that experience is, and level it up, as you said, and make it a little bit better. So, Mel, we've been talking a little bit. You've talked about your career as a therapist. We've talked about public speaking. We've talked a little bit about, our personal lives. There are many spaces in those areas and others where women kind of are taught to play small. and are not necessarily encouraged to think of their value as being equal to or greater than their male counterparts, or even Black women being considered similarly to their other counterparts, right? So, how can we encourage women to get more comfortable asking for what they want in those spaces where it seems as though they are a bit negotiation averse to people who look and are like us?
Great question. The first thing that comes to mind for me, and maybe this is the therapist in me talking, is that we first have to recognize our own worth. That we can't show up to the table and anticipate or expect or want other people who've already been sitting at the table to tell us, like, oh, Kerri, this is what you're worth. Oh, Melissa, this is what you're worth. But that we're coming to the table knowing the value of that, knowing what we are worth. And again, that doesn't always have to mean compensation. That could be the worth for you to be in the room, that, we can identify or define, what worth means to you, but you have to know it for yourself before you go out into the world and expect them to define it for you. Because if you're allowing them to define it, then you get tossed to and fro and tossed up and down, and you come home, you're like, what just happened? Or who am I? And the goal is that you know who you are before you even set to the table to have the conversation. So I think that that's a good place to start. And then another thing that I think is helpful is practicing it. We talked about negotiation being a muscle to exercise. And even at my big age of being in private practice for over 15 years and being a therapist for over 20 years, I still practice when I'm going to have a conversation with the client about my rate increasing. And it's because I need to hear myself say it first. I don't want to say it to them and be like, well, my new rate is, and I want to be able to say it with confidence versus, well, my new rate is, and it has a question mark behind it. If it has a question mark behind it, they're like, girl, that's not your new rate because you're not even sure. And so what I do is, as I'm driving into the office, and it's not a whole practice of a skit, but I'll just make that one sentence. My new rate is. And so that way I've written it down and I've decided mentally and emotionally what it is. But what also works for me is to hear myself say it, because I know that I'm going to say it to someone else. And so that's a good place to practice. Practice in the mirror, practice in the car, or practice with a dear friend and be like, girl, we need to role play. I want to say that I want to ask for this amount, or I want to ask for these negotiations. Can you let me know how I sound, or if there's any uncertainty in my voice?
Those are great places to start. The practice piece is so important. And I think it leads kind of into a little bit of what my point is. And I feel like I've talked about this before, but also preparation. Do your homework with respect to what it is you're going to be asking for. I worked at a company, and in spite of the fact that they were a telecommunications company, their general counsel was a hard no on working from home, no matter what. And so if I had walked in there and been like, but can I work from home 3 days a week? I would have run into a brick wall. So negotiation is exactly that. It's some give, take on both sides. So you're not going to get everything you want just because you're asking for it. And so the more times you ask for things that are based in reality of the situation, the better your chances are of walking out with something you want. So do some research. If you are an accountant and you're going to apply at this company, you can find some general information about what accountants are making at this company. If you are starting up a new bakery, right? And so at that point, you're negotiating with your potential clients, right? You can do some market research and find out what are cupcakes selling for in your market. So you really want to make sure that your requests are grounded in a level of reality, and you're not just opening up shop and you're like, $10 for a cupcake, when, most of the people in that community are, not making enough to be able to afford a $10 cupcake. You're not going to have a lot of business. Or if you're walking into a company that plain and simple has a stated rule of no working from home, don't ask to work from home. The other thing that I would say is make sure that your list of things that you're asking for is a specific list. Don't go in there, this is a part of preparation, and be like, so I was thinking maybe we could, I don't know, can you maybe help me pay for my car? think that you could have snacks. I mean, you need to have an idea. What do you actually want? Being a good negotiator is really knowing the outcome that you want and being clear on what the components of that outcome are, so that if it's a no to elements 1 and 2, then you're prepared with, 3, 4, 5, and you might just get 4, 5, and maybe, based on the conversation, you come up with a 6 kind of off the cuff. But 1 through 5 to be very clear, and that 1 through 5 should really be based in reality of the situation. The other thing is kind of picking up on what you said also. Prepare to negotiate without apology. You're not going in there feeling bad about it, feeling a question about whether or not you deserve it. Your tone needs to be confident and clear. And you need to really be in a position where you're not sorry because you're asking for what it is that you genuinely believe that you're worth. And knowing that if ultimately that negotiation breaks down, sometimes negotiations do break down, but usually if you're negotiating, you're in a conversation with someone who really wants something from you, and you really do have something to offer them. So kind of have faith in the process too. I think that would be maybe the third thing. Have faith in the process, that if you're in a negotiation conversation, there's a good chance both of you want to walk out of that negotiation being prepared, or having gotten an outcome that works for everyone. And then I think the last thing is your mindset. I always say, any good lawyer says to a client, when you leave the negotiation, everybody should be a little bit disappointed.
I've heard divorce lawyers say that.
Yes, right? Oh, goodness, divorce, yes. But in any context, truthfully, you rarely want to give up more than you should, and you rarely want to receive less than you think you should get. But that is really, to me, the pinnacle example of a good negotiation. So prepare your mindset for that going in, so that you're not kind of just walking in. You're going to have your boundaries, and we'll get to that, I think, in our last question. And you're going to have some things I'm not leaving out here. I'm not leaving this place, accepting less than X, but there is a lot of room to get to X. The other thing that I'll say, so yeah, I'll say those are kind of my tips for the person who is maybe having a hard time in a space where her negotiation is not necessarily welcome. Those are some things you can do to get ready to be successful with your negotiations in that environment.
Yes, I agree 1,000%. And I want to add to two of the things you said about being prepared. I think that is extremely important. That helps with your confidence and asking what you're going to ask for. Also, the reality too is that a company, a business, a brand, they love when people do their homework. They love when you come to the table like, I know I saw that you guys do not offer your employees to work from home, which I understand. However, I'd be interested in, like, they love like, okay, she did her homework. She didn't just come to the table with any nonsense. So I think that's really important. And then I think also, and we'll get into this, as you said, Kerri, in the last question, I think also to be sure about your negotiations, because once you negotiate and they go back, to their table, then usually that's that. Like, of course, like I know with attorneys or in law, there can be some back and forth, but usually if you're negotiating a salary, for example, and you say, you know what, I think I need 5,000 more per month than that. And they say, okay, well, let us see what we can do. We'll get back to you. And when they come back and they give you your 5,000, don't be like, okay, you know what? I think I need 2,000 more than that. Like, no, you have to know what you're asking for.
So true.
That first ask, the first ask.
Yep. I mean, that is absolutely true. And because if nothing else, it makes it look as though you're negotiating in bad faith.
Right.
And that
Yes.
just establishes the relationship, or it changes a good relationship to one feeling that they can't trust you.
Right.
You've got to know, that's such a good point. There's no bidding against yourself, or when they come back, okay, this is what I've asked for. We're giving you everything you're asking for, because that's how they're going to feel. They're going to feel like we've given you everything and now you want more. You haven't even demonstrated afraid, what is the basis of your more? So
Right.
don't put yourself in a position of having to explain that or risking losing someone's trust. So
Yes. Or the
yes,
opportunity, or losing
or
the
the
opportunity.
opportunity. Absolutely.
Oh, okay, all together now. Absolutely. So, Kerri, we've kind of put it out there about boundaries or non-negotiables. What are your non-negotiables, and how did you learn them? And even if you don't have specific ones that you want to share that are yours, just in general, what do you think are good places to have non-negotiables?
I think, first of all, you want to establish in any negotiation environment a level of respect. And you have to first, of course, present yourself respectfully. But in any environment where again, there's give, take, there's push and pull, it can feel very uncomfortable. There should be no circumstance in which you are disrespectful to that person or you allow someone to disrespect you. It completely undermines the ability to believe that the outcome is a right one because the disrespect tarnishes everything. So I really, really think in any environment that you're in, you really want to make sure that you are clear on this will be a respectful environment. I will respect you. You will respect me back. I'd say kind of in a business environment, some of the non-negotiables for me are, you have baseline expectations for people. And so there are going to be moments in time where you have to negotiate around someone's work performance. But what I will not do is negotiate around values, negotiate around integrity, negotiate around the things that allow me to be the business owner that I am. So I can say, okay, your job description says you're going to make 15 burgers every minute. Okay, and you're telling me, you know what? It's literally not possible because we can't even get that much meat cooked at the same time. Okay, we can negotiate that. Let's go ahead and let's bring that down to 12. However, I am expecting that when you're making those 12 burgers, you are always following food safety practices. That is a non-negotiable. So there are going to be, I really think it's maybe like the broad category will be those intangible things that are not negotiable when you are negotiating typically very tangible things: dollars, time, location, quantity. Things of that nature are usually kind of going to be the subject of the negotiation. It's those intangibles that I think you've really got to make sure they continue to be a part of the process and they continue to not change whatever the outcome is. Because I'm going to give something up. I want 15 burgers a minute. Like I want to sell 15 burgers a minute. However, if it can't be done, I'm willing to negotiate that tangible, but not the way in which you execute the tangible.
Right.
I would say kind of those would be two examples, kind of broadly speaking, of non-negotiables that I can think of in the negotiation context.
Okay. All right.
How about you?
One specifically to me in my private practice is my private practice rate for individual clients and individual clients and for couples clients. That rate is non-negotiable. Mm-hmm. I have offered what's called a sliding scale rate, meaning I may see someone at a little lower of a rate based on what they can afford or their income. And that's also based on my availability and capacity to be able to take that on. But the therapy is a relationship. And it's one of those relationships that is very different from a friendship or even from a business relationship. And so once you start negotiating with clients what they can pay you, it changes the dynamics of the relationship. And so when it comes to the work that I do with clients in any form of negotiation, it is a matter of, does this negotiation still hold the value and the integrity of the therapeutic process? And me negotiating my salary, they're like, well, I can't pay you $425, but I can pay you $325. Is that okay? No, that's not okay. That's my rate. That is not my rate. Because then now we are in a dynamic where there may be more negotiation, and that negotiation may now get into murky grounds about boundaries, murky ground about ethics and things of that nature. So that's the first one that comes to mind for me. I think that your non-negotiables, it's a personal journey, because there are some things that I've gone to the table not knowing what my non-negotiables were until I had that experience. And then hindsight is like, oh, that's a non-negotiable for me moving forward. And then from there, it's implemented. And so I think it's important too, to yes, I agree that values, ethics, integrity, those things are non-negotiable. And so knowing, again, back to knowing who you are and knowing your worth and knowing what you stand for, I think that's important, because then that's going to lend to where am I willing to negotiate and where am I willing to say no, that is outside of my grounds of who I am as a human, who I am as a woman.
Yeah, I mean, this concept of non-negotiables, I would definitely encourage you, as so many things that we say, to remember that many of these things are evolving.
Yes.
And they change depending upon the context. So some of my non-negotiables in my marriage might be different than things that I might allow in the workplace, might be different than what I allow with my kids, might be different than what I allow in my friendships, or it might be different than what I allow with my sister. And so, I remember early in dating Sanford, I would have told anybody else, you can't call me after 10 o'clock. That is non-negotiable. Yeah. But here I am on the phone with him from 10 to 2 in the morning, And so, it would be, but, for work, call me 24 hours a day. That is not, that's not a limit that I put. So keep in mind that, it's okay to have non-negotiables in different environments and contexts, but you just got to be clear on what those non-negotiables are depending upon where you are. And know, again, as Mel said at the top of our time together, pretty much everything is negotiable. I mean, truly, you can walk into a Target and it's marked as $1 each, and you can say, but hey, if I buy 15 of them, can you get, sure, they're happy to sell those 15, so even in a place like Target or wherever you might be, you definitely can find a way to negotiate something. You just got to figure out in that environment, what is the boundary,
right.
And what non-negotiables apply in this particular context.
Absolutely. Which goes back to something you mentioned and I echoed, doing your homework.
Yeah.
It goes back to doing your homework. So we've been talking about negotiating. But what is non-negotiable for us is having you here as our guest. We are so grateful for that. There are a lot of things and a lot of people and places that you could be going, listening to. There's so many podcasts out there. And you decided that this time with us was non-negotiable. And we truly appreciate that. And we would also love it if you would share this episode with a friend, family member, colleague. If you would leave us a review, if you would find us and follow us, we'd be so grateful for that. Those are the last of what I have to say. I don't have any more tips. Honestly, we usually end with some tips and I just don't have any. I feel like I'm all tipped out. But Kerri, if you have some tips or if you have some closing remarks for our hatters, we'd love to hear it.
One of the things that we've been learning in this journey of the Hats Podcast is that the Hats Podcast is global.
Yes.
And we have listeners all over the world. And I think we were a little shocked by that. So I would love if people would be interested in sharing with us. If you are from a different part of the United States, we're here in sunny Southern California, different parts of the US, or from another country, we would love to hear how negotiation takes place in your locality. How are cultural norms shaping the way you or others around you negotiate the things that you are really important to you or that you really want in your life? So that's the only thing that I would say is we would love your tips as well, because certainly, we are frankly, I think, very good at it. And that's why we feel qualified to talk about it. But we certainly are not beyond learning. We are absolute lifelong learners. You all know that. So we would love to hear from you if where you are in your culture, negotiation takes a different shape or form.
Awesome. Thank you so much for listening. We can't wait to hear from you, and we tip our hats to you.
The information in this podcast is provided for general informational purposes only and should not be construed as legal, medical, or therapeutic advice. Listening to this podcast does not take the place of developing an individual relationship with a therapist or attorney. If you need help for mental health or legal issues, we strongly encourage you to find a professional in your area who can help meet your individual needs.